Welcome to Study Wind, where we make learning a breeze. Today we will be looking at solving quadratics. Bear in mind we'll only be looking at the basics for now, since this is part 1. So, the first way to solve quadratics, which we'll be going over today, is to factorize the equation. You take two numbers which are factors of the third number, and if they add up to the second number, you place them into the brackets, because the way it works is that x is multiplied. You multiply each number of the brackets by each other number. So the two x's multiply together to make the x squared in the equation. The two numbers multiply together to get the end number, and x multiplies by each number and is added together to get the middle number. So the two factors are selected because if they add up, you'll have x times 2 and x times 1, adding up to 3x. And so, when you solve it, you'll have to factorize it correctly. And then, you want it to equal 0, because that's the ideal format. You can only factorize something correctly if it equals 0, so don't leave anything on the other side of the equation. So, how would you get x plus 2 times x plus 1 to equal 0? You'd have to make one of the brackets equal 0, because then the other bracket would be multiplied by 0, and everyone knows that anything multiplied by 0 equals 0. So what plus 1 equals 0? Minus 1 plus 1 would equal 0. And what plus 2 equals 0? Minus 2 plus 2 equals 0. So x is both minus 1 and minus 2. The other way to do it, if you can't factorize something, if there are no available factors which add up, you'll have to put it into the quadratic formula. Minus b plus or minus root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. If you slot the values, a being the number before x squared, right now it's 1, b being the number before the regular x, so it's 3, and c being the third number, which is 1, you'll get to your values. So the values here are minus 0.38 and minus 2.62. Now for a comprehension test, to test whether you've comprehended what they've told you. So, the first question, how would you factorize x squared plus 5x plus 4? How do you solve it? Generally, use factorization in any non-calculator questions, because the quadratic formula is very hard to execute without a calculator, although some rare questions do involve you simplifying the quadratic formula, but that's not relevant today. So what you need to know is that if you can factorize it, then you should try using the factorization method, and if it's a calculator question and you can't factorize it, you should use the quadratic formula in situations like that. So for questions 1 and 2 here, you'll be factorizing, and for questions 3 and 4 you will use the quadratic formula. So how do you solve x squared plus 5x plus 4? You would do x plus 4 times x plus 1, because 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 plus 1 is 5. And you have to get the negatives of each number, because minus 4 plus 4 is 0, and you want one of the brackets to equal 0. And question 2. How do you factorize 2x squared plus 5x plus 3? You would get 2x plus 3 times x plus 1, because here you have to bear in mind the 2x squared. One of the values has to be 2x to multiply out to get 2x squared. And so, you'll have to factor this into your equation. So you'll have to get which pair of values of the last number, which pair of factors of 3, will have one of the factors multiplied by 2 and one of the factors multiplied by 1, and which pair of factors will go through these conditions and add up to 5. It's rather simple in this question, since for 3 there are only 2 pairs only one pair of factors because it's a prime number. So you get 2x plus 3 times x plus 1, since that's the only combination which works. But there's an additional complication at the end here. What is multiplied by 2 and added to 3 to get 0? You'll have to have minus 3 over 2, because minus 3 over 2 multiplied by 2 is minus 3, and minus 3 plus 3 is 0. And x plus 1, that's simple, it's just minus 1, because 1 minus 1 is 0. For question 3 and 4, you'll be using the quadratic formula. So, how do you solve x squared minus 3x minus 5? You'll just have to put this into the quadratic formula. So x equals minus b, so minus 3, minus 3, so 3, plus or minus root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I'm not going to write out the workings here, because everyone should know how to use the quadratic formula. And the answers you'll get are 4.19 or minus 1.19. And for the last question, you also have to use the quadratic formula, except it's slightly more complex, so be careful with typing it into your calculator. And you should always double check your answers, just in case you mistype anything. So how do you calculate 5x squared minus 27x plus 25? X would be 4.21 or 1.19. That's all for today, so remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more cool maths videos.